Welcome to segment 3 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, August the 25th. I'd like to thank again the volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this program happen every week. Our guest in this segment is Alan Cassels. Alan is a pharmaceutical policy researcher. Alan, you've been on the show before, so welcome, and what are we going to talk about this time?
Well, the newest new thing, Jack, is a drug that was just approved in the United States for a new disease called Hypoactive Sexual Desire Disorder. It's a drug for female sexual dysfunction. There's never been a drug like this approved in the U.S. or anywhere in the world, and so this was a very important sort of announcement. And really, from my opinion and others, this is a clear example of the regulator sort of missing the boat on trying to keep unsafe drugs off the market.
So can you just explain what this problem is?
Yes.
And why suddenly there's a medicine or drug for it?
Well, so the pharmaceutical industry has been attempting to define a condition that they can treat with a drug for women, a sexual drug. So they look at the success of drugs like Viagra or drugs for erectile dysfunction in men. They say, well, what about the market for women? And so for the last 15 to 18 years, the industry has been sponsoring workshops and conferences and research to define what would be an appropriate market for a drug for female sexual dysfunction. They've tried a number of times. This particular product that was just approved is called flibanserin. It goes by the trade name Addy, A-D-D-Y-I.
Addy.
This drug is approved to treat what they call hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which is low sexual desire in women. So you sort of say, well, is this drug an aphrodisiac for women? Well, that's how it appears to be not only it's going to be marketed that way, but the condition is low desire. And so they've taken what I think is a very common situation with women where they're not interested in sex. They're either too tired, too uninterested in their partner, or they've got other things on their mind, and basically created a disease around this. I mean, there are women's health activists in the U.S. that are absolutely up in arms that the company was allowed to even produce a drug for this so-called condition. They don't believe the condition exists in the first place. The company had tried to get the drug approved 2 other times. There were 2 other attempts to get the drug approved. And essentially, at that point, the FDA said, we don't think this is an appropriate drug. We're not going to approve it. This last time, what happened is the company funded a very major public relations campaign to try to even the score. And that was the name of the campaign. We want to even the score. So women allegedly in this group were saying, look, there's all these drugs for men for male sexual dysfunction. We have to even the score. We have to get something for women. And so they shaped it as a sort of narrative around equality. We too should be able to take pharmaceuticals for our sexual difficulties. And at one level you might say, yeah, okay, so maybe there should be some attempt to produce drugs for women that have some distress around sex. But at the same time, when you look at this drug and how it was tested, so they took, several thousand women who are allegedly suffering from this disease of low sexual interest. They gave some of them the placebo and some of them the drug, and then they followed them. They kept diaries about their experiences. The difference between the drug and the placebo, can you have a guess of what the difference would be?
Nothing?
Well, it wouldn't be approved if it was nothing. The difference was measured under something called SSE, which stands for Successful Sexual Experience. The women who took the placebo had an increase of 0.5 SSE per month. The women who took the drug had about 1 increased SSE per month. So the difference between the two is about half a satisfying sexual experience per month. That was the benefit of the drug, and on that benefit, they got the drug approved. Critics and others are sitting back there looking at this saying, really? You are going to be prescribing a drug for women. By the way, the drug is a recycled antidepressant. You're going to give women an antidepressant that has a range of side effects and other adverse effects as well. You're going to give a drug to a woman every day so that she can have one half an additional satisfying sexual experience per month. You know, it just really didn't pass the sniff test for a lot of us. We were looking at this and going, this is bizarre. The difference, though, of course, is that the patient group, even the SCORE campaign, put so much pressure on the regulator to approve this drug that that's what really made the difference. The regulator sort of said, well, maybe we should allow women to have, you know, some...
I can hardly wait to see the advertising.
Well, you know what's really interesting about this is that there were some warnings. So usually when they approve a drug, they say it's useful in women who have, or patients that have this kind of condition, but it should not be used in people that have these kinds of conditions. It's called contraindication. Well, one of the things that they say specifically in the drug information is that the drug should not be taken with alcohol because it can cause fainting, nausea. It can cause more adverse effects in women. So you think, so these are women who are trying to have satisfying sexual encounters and the drug, and they're taking this drug, but they're not supposed to be taking alcohol. You know, it's just a kind of bizarre situation.
Who's the corporation that's...
The company, now this is another really interesting fact. The company that created this or got this drug approved is called Sprout Pharmaceuticals in the U.S. The day after the drug had approval by the U.S. FDA, this was just last week, by the way, a Canadian pharmaceutical company named Valiant bought Sprout Pharmaceuticals. So this chemical is now owned by a Canadian pharmaceutical company. They haven't yet started marketing the drug. That'll probably happen next month or the month after. But yes, you can imagine the controversy that it's going to cause. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of people say many things constitute poor or distressful sexual situations for women. It's not just a chemical imbalance in your brain. It has to do with the quality of the relationship. It has to do with whether the woman gets enough sleep, whether she's feeling stressed out or not, whether she feels supported. You know, I was joking with a journalist the other day saying that they should test the drug against other known treatments for sexual dysfunction. And in the case of female sexual dysfunction, they should have tested the drug against a guy who does his laundry or vacuums the house. Anyway.
And you know, the exactly the same situation exists with something you've written about called the statin drugs. Because I think, again, the pharmaceutical industry created a health concern.
Yes.
Found a drug to treat it. It's turned out, I think, to be a complete lie and disaster.
Yeah, the whole cholesterol lowering world, I mean, we could spend hours talking about that, but you know, it's the same thing that's at play.
Tell the story and people will see how it's kind of the same as with this new Addy or whatever it's called.
Again, high cholesterol is a relatively normal condition. What's considered abnormal has essentially been defined by committees that have been staffed by people from the pharmaceutical industry.
Right, so
the makers of the drug have actually shaped the definition of the disease.
Yes.
And so you go to your doctor, one of the things on the doctor's checklist might be, you know, you're at a certain age, we should check your cholesterol. It comes back high. What do you do? Well, there's this drug. I mean, there's not just this drug, there are 7 or 8 drugs in that category, statin drugs. These would be drugs like Crestor or Lipitor. These drugs can reduce your cholesterol. At the end of the day, you might say, what does it matter whether my cholesterol is high or low? And what's really interesting is that most people that have their blood cholesterol lowered by a statin are not going to have any health benefit. There's not going to be any benefit from having a reduced risk of a heart attack or stroke. If you're at super high risk, perhaps you've had a previous heart attack or stroke, you might see some benefit. There might be 2 or 3% of people in that category would benefit, but the vast majority of people that take statins will have no benefit, and they'll waste their money, and they will be essentially chasing a number At least.
But even worse is they're going to get side effects from the drug.
Well, that's the other thing, is that the side effects, we're not really fully clear what the side effects of the female sexual dysfunction drug is going to be, because you don't really know what they are until they get used by the big population, by the general population. With the statins, when they came out, they said, oh yes, there's a small percentage of people that have muscle weakening, somewhere around 2 to 3%. When that drug got used in the real world, the actual numbers that experienced this muscle weakening was somewhere between 20 and 25%. About a quarter of the people that take the drug have really sore muscles, so they can't, say, exercise or walk, or and they're, you know, essentially destroying their muscle fibers by this particular product.
Which isn't helping them at all, because it turns out that high cholesterol in many cases is better than low cholesterol.
Well, certainly for older people, and this drives me nuts, because you see patients, you see people 75 or 80 years old, they're taking their statin every day religiously, and you say, really? The actual fact is that older people benefit from higher cholesterol. You shouldn't be tampering. Like, the general population doesn't really benefit from statins, but definitely people who are, say, 75 and older do not benefit from having their cholesterol lowered. And in fact, they find that higher cholesterol is protective. It's very important for your cognitive function, your thinking, and so on. And so it's completely absurd to be trying to alter cholesterol in older people.
And I think the statin drugs are the #1 bestsellers ever. I mean, a lot of money. We're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Yes, in fact, I wrote an article last month in Common Ground about there's a new generation of statin drugs coming out, Jack. The old ones have been on the market for, say, almost 20 years, say, since the mid-90s. This new treatment that is going to be launched fairly soon in the US are injectable, they're not statins, but they are cholesterol-altering drugs. These drugs are going to cost somewhere between $10,000 to $14,000 a year, and there is no evidence that they're going to provide any more benefit or any less benefit than the regular statins. But, you know, they're new, they're going to be well marketed, there's going to be lots of salespeople selling these treatments to our doctors.
Yeah, and that's our healthcare system. Alan, thank you very much.
You're welcome.